But like, what is spirituality actually? You know, like when I think about it, it's like, what's the definition? Like, what would be that for you when you think about it?
For me, is keeping your, how will I say this? It's a very interesting question. The way
Mm.
I would put it, what is spirituality for me? For me, is nourishing the other side.
Hmm.
Basically, for me, it's anything to do with the other side. So there's current reality and there's the other side.
Yeah.
So anything that we cannot see, we cannot fix physically, we can do in another realm or through spirituality. So for me, it's a practice of maintaining and nourishing the other side.
The spiritual
Yeah,
side.
spiritual side
The
of you. Yeah, yeah,
non-material
yeah,
side.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what about you?
I'd say it's similar. I think it's like exploring your kind of extrasensory abilities
That as well.
and
That's
and
actually
and
really good.
learning like things through them, and knowing more about yourself and about the reality of the world around you, and kind of like, accepting that part into your normal life.
I like when you say like nourishing your extra sensory abilities, because
Yeah.
obviously we all have them, like some less, some more. So it's
Yeah.
like definitely refining these gifts that we're naturally, we all have them and we're born with them, which is interesting because according to the theory of evolution, we shouldn't have these very sixth sensory abilities, because, for example, animals have them a lot. They're more, even though them being animals, they do have this like sixth sense or this knowing that apparently we as humans, even though they push the theory of evolution, but
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not supposed to be, to have these.
I was listening to some kind of podcast, and now I don't know the names. Maybe I'm going to have to research into this. But apparently, when the whole theory of evolution was made, there was another dude actually working on it that had a huge interest into paranormal, and but nobody ever wrote about this, and it is said like, oh, we're going to just get rid of this because we don't want this to disturb the theory of evolution.
Yeah.
And I think the humanity wasn't kind of ready for it because yeah, when the theory of evolution kind of even was born, I think it was like a breath of fresh air, because now like Christianity didn't have that much of a hold in schools and everything. So, but we kind of like didn't continue from there, like, yeah, okay, let's look at evolution of species, and obviously that animals and humans also evolve, within the environment they are in, because they have to adapt to it. But what about the other things?
The theory of evolution that's taught in schools, it's definitely, it was a beginning to something, to a
Yes.
discovery of something, and it
Yeah.
started off really well.
It's
Where,
valid, like.
yeah, yeah, it's getting, so let's get to know our species from the beginning. But then unfortunately they never, I mean, they did dig deeper. It's just that they didn't dare to go as deep. Because
Yeah.
as you said, it would usurp certain bodies, certain government bodies, or certain, uh, facts. There's a lot of money behind certain theories. There's a lot of funding that goes into certain areas. So
Yeah.
obviously, if you say something that like defies an original theory, I did read that it will like defund you basically. So like the funding went into, like, it started off as a good idea. So I always say the European Union started off as a good idea, but
Yeah.
because it started off with a good idea doesn't mean it continued. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh,
There is this, how would I say, if you're a scientist and you even consider spirituality or
mhm.
anything extrasensory, and immediately like you're discredited among the scientific community, and
Yeah.
that's still the way it is. That's, I think, the reason why the science didn't have any major, breakthroughs in the last like 40, 50 years.
But
It's
what's interesting is that we're developing AI so much, which when you think about it, when you think about the way a computer works,
Mhm.
functions, it functions based upon frequencies and crystals, you know? So,
Yeah,
you know, uh, it's something. So how come haven't we developed that other side, which is very much physical in some evidence?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Even like the birth of AI, in a way, it's like all the information, it's somewhere in the space. It's not like
Yeah,
physical, you know, you
it's
can't touch it.
nanotechnology. You can't see it. You know,
Yeah.
frequency, the way electricity is built is pure frequency. It's,
Also,
you
what
know,
scientists noticed, which I think is remarkable thing, and I don't know why it's pushed aside so much, is that when you make an experiment, what they notice, if you have an idea what the result of the experiment will be, you affect it. And this is what a lot of scientists like started talking about, is like your thoughts like actually changing the experiment.
isn't that evidence enough? I mean, you know what's I find interesting? During, I think it was the Victorian era, I think around definitely the end of the Victorian era, there was a lot of interest in spirituality,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people were conducting seances, and they
Yes.
were,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of like actual experts trying to look at. I think the term, I'm not sure now, I might be wrong, but I think the term ectoplasm was actually
Yes.
present within that era.
Yeah.
You know, so it started off. There was an interest to explain all these things, even because at the end of the day, I do believe it to be physics, metaphysics. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the time is for the science and spirituality to become one, and Eastern spirituality does it so good.
Hmm.
They do it
They
amazingly.
do.
Like
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you talk with them, and and they always like mention Vedas and how, and that's all normal to them. It's like, yeah,
You know,
it's
you mention energies, you mention stuff like that, and they're like, yeah, well, that's kind of part of our practice. You know, our
yeah,
whole family, we all, you know, you must do that to keep the energy like in certain ways.
yeah.
Like feng shui, for example, I'm fascinated
Ayurveda,
by Ayurveda. There's a It's a Shintoism in Japan as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
amazing because it's uh,
Acupressure, acupuncture.
yes,
Come
yes.
on, where's the end? And we here in the West is like, no, no, no. If you go to something like that, there's a high chance that your family is going to make fun of you and say, why don't you just
But
go to a normal doctor?
and that was brought up by Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
Anything, even nowadays, I mean, you saw the comments I get on my YouTube and my Instagram or whatever. Anything I post or anything, or any, not just me, like anyone else that posts about anything to do with energies, entities, spirits, anything, even Eastern spirituality,
Yeah.
it's always deemed of the devil. How
Yeah.
come that Japan has Shintoism, or even in Hinduism, a lot of stuff like that are taught.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
this discussion with, uh, sorry, I can't remember his name now. I
Kashish?
don't,
No?
Kashish. So
No.
you've talked about it with him in the podcast. So
Yeah.
so how come that you don't come to Asia, or you don't come to India, for example, and you say, well, that's of the devil, because they're gonna laugh at you, you know?
They're gonna laugh
Like
at you. They're
imagine
gonna be
coming.
like, what are you, a peasant? Like,
Yeah,
come
what
on.
are you, a medieval peasant, basically, you know? And we in the West, we still get comments like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
have we, like, okay, you've developed computers, you've developed like life is so progressive, and you still refuse to acknowledge metaphysics.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Why?
and to accept, and this is, I think this is the most ridiculous part, because like if you look at Christianity, in its essence, it has this idea that there is a soul, and when you die you go to heaven,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
there's this whole spiritual world. But then when you need to like talk about it in physical life, they don't accept it. What?
When you have to talk about, for example, I have felt the presence of angels.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's the devil. That's the devil
No.
tempting you. It's like,
Mm.
excuse me, you believe in afterlife? Yes, I do. So what are
But
we
not
talking about?
reincarnation. Uh,
So like, okay, so you cannot, I don't know, how do you call the stuff that they put on the horses when they
Oh
uh,
yeah,
pull a carriage,
the thing
the
that you can't
thing,
look on the
whatever.
side,
Actually,
so the horse doesn't get.
the most people I met that were believers in Christianity and Islam, or even Judaism,
Yeah.
they're all like really, okay, there's a God, which all of the religions talked about, all of the pagan worship belief, they all talk about one main source of whatever, or multiple.
Hmm.
So how come that you cannot see, you're so afraid to see? It's better to know, in my opinion, better to know the devil than to not. Better to know
Mm.
what's around you than be completely clueless and think, well, I'm not going to like pay attention to anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, and also the materialism that we have in Western society, which like fuels, obviously we're fueled by materialism so much that anything spiritual is actually, even I see nowadays spirituality getting mixed with so much materialism. It's almost like
Mm.
it's building a business that is nice on the outside, looks spiritual on the outside,
Yeah.
but once
Yeah.
you get into that, like there's not really much depth. Everything is rainbows and flowers, and spirituality is like big ups and downs constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And even like your normal Christian, like your normal Hinduist, for example, would still do yoga, would still go to an Ayurvedic, practitioner
yeah.
if he has heartburn or something, right? Or would explore different things and have rituals and offerings to God. But your normal Christian would do nothing, would go to church, wouldn't even would come there just to look how everyone else what they're wearing and
How much
give money to
they're giving,
the
yeah.
yeah.
But there's
And
no like work on the body.
no,
You
there's
know,
no work on
you
anything.
can't just function spiritually and expect. Because, as you said, in Hinduism they would practice yoga as well, in
Yeah,
Buddhism as well.
yeah,
So there has to be like a connection of both for it
yeah,
to work properly. If
yeah.
you're just up here,
it,
it's dangerous
that's
not to
mentally,
because you're
yeah,
basically never grounding yourself
yeah,
because you're always in prayers, like you're always praying and you're not grounding it, so you're going somewhere up there and you're getting actually becoming vulnerable
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's a work of like we're like machines, we're
Mm,
built of the physical and the ethereal, the spiritual, so yes, in I don't see in Islam or Christianity, or I mean I don't know too much about Judaism, to be honest. I've read like bits and pieces of the Talmud, but I haven't really like gone
yeah.
into
I mean,
that.
there's Kabbalah
Yeah.
there,
Kabbalah there,
which
yeah, yeah,
which
which is a whole different story.
yes, yeah, which is they took it from the Egyptian Kabbalah, actually.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. If you look at the kind of history of it, it's from Egypt originally. But you see, like, and I think that is the reason why in Christianity there are so many cults,
Hmm.
and these cults are extremely dangerous because, like, if you're like growing up in community which does not allow you to use any kind of spiritual gifts. Everything is of devil. If you're raised within a community that's repressing sexuality, which is usually happening in very kind of like radical Christian cults. If you're coming, from a place where you're not allowed to think for yourself and there's rules and you have to follow them, you become extremely dangerous to society. Like, and this is not spirituality as well. This is an ego thing.
It's pure control and
Yeah.
manipulation. You
Yeah.
know,
And I've seen people saying, I want to save you. I was like, wait.
the recent comment I got on my YouTube, I don't want you to go to hell. I want to save you the same way Jesus saved me.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, how can you assume that I might have been already saved? How do you know that I'm not saved by my enlightenment and my realization? Like it's bold for you to assume that I need saving,
yeah.
you
And,
know?
and it's very egotistic to assume
Yeah,
you have the recipe for salvation as well.
exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
save from what?